Now, the United Kingdom used to be king of the waves, basically. Rule Britannia. Britannia rules the waves. We were one of the greatest naval countries in the world. In fact, it was through our naval superiority that at one point we basically owned and ran a third of the world. Well, now look at us. 6 warships, 3 of them can't even get going because they're under long-term repair. The one that's supposed to be sent can't go yet for reasons that are way beyond my comprehension. Everyone else is having to send their military assets, their naval assets, into the theatre in the Middle East to defend our airbase. What is going on? Let's speak to Rear Admiral Chris Parry, ex-NATO commander, former Royal Navy commander. I mean, Chris, we knew we were under-resourced. We had not been investing in defence. We knew that no government really has taken seriously the need to be prepared for war, despite seeing how geopolitically feeble the world is. And we've really been exposed now. How bad is it?
Well, it's really bad, Alex. The fact that we have 6 air defence destroyers and we can't actually get one to Cyprus within sailing time is absolutely ludicrous. You know, I mean, I left the Royal Navy in 2008 and we had more air defence destroyers then than we have now. There's no question about that. Things are much more capable if they're properly manned, if they're properly equipped and they're in the right place at the right time. But I'm afraid to say that we've had a succession of senior officers and also politicians who think the next election is more important than defending this country.
My understanding is the Navy had essentially said to the government, for crying out loud, we've got to get into the region. I mean, things are beginning to hot up when America was sending its warships towards Iran. And that this government, for reasons that I can't comprehend, decided to ignore them. Is that normal practice? Is it, you know, do a lot of governments just sort of pick and choose when the security services or the Navy says, this is our advice to you, you know, this is our strategic advice because we're the professionals and we know how these things play out? Do governments normally go, OK, got it, right, going to act on it? Or is it typical that a government goes, well, thanks for that, OK, we'll consider it, bye? Yep,
the latter, I'm afraid. Every politician I've dealt with, except a couple under the last Labour government, in fact, whenever you say anything to them at senior level, they all think they know your business better than you do. And everybody flatters themselves that they know about military stuff. I mean, when I was in the Ministry of Defence, as soon as somebody from the city rang up and said something about international finance or economics, you'd see politicians jumping at it. But when people who've trained all their lives to give advice about military operations say something, I'm afraid they generally either ignore it or they say some domestic political issue is more important. The fact of life is we're in a really parlous state right now. Our defences have been neglected. And I think the last time the Royal Navy had something as humiliating as this is when the Dutch sailed up the Medway and stole one of our warships called the Royal Charles. And that was in 1667. And I'm afraid to say this doesn't do our national image or indeed our professional image any good at all. But let me stress, Alex, these Type 45s are in such a bad state because of political decisions made by the last Labour government. I was there when decisions were made about what equipment was put into these ships, the fact that all the money went on the air defence system and nothing else really was given proper weight and attention, and they were put into service. I should also add that we were originally going to have 12 of them. It was cut down to 6. But even if we had 12 of them today, I doubt whether any of them would be ready for action because of the manifest problems that actually exist on the ships themselves. I mean, underwater, you know, they're supposed to be quite silent in relation to detection by submarines. They sound like a box of spanners because it was neglected in terms of noise hardening, as we call it, and acoustic hygiene.
Now, when we do finally set sail and go and join the party, how vulnerable are we going to be? Because we're on the back foot then. People can track our movements. They know what we're up to. They can watch us real time, taking however long it's going to take to get to Cyprus. And looking at what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz right now, and America saying, well, look, we're going to have to go in there and escort oil tankers through that strait. There are some people saying, well, perhaps he's walking into a trap because the Iranian regime is estimated to have 17 submarines garrisoned at its headquarters, which is just at the north of the Strait of Hormuz. Is there a possibility when we finally trundle into action that we are basically a sort of floating duck, a moving target?
Well, yeah, but I mean, the American Navy's got anti-submarine assets that can deal with that. They've already had their major submarines destroyed already. These are mini subs. They're not normal submarines you and I would think are capable of things. I mean, you know, I'm the only person since 1945 to have actually disabled a submarine. So I can talk with some authority on this. The fact of life is the Iranians have a very low capability. The real threat I would worry about in the Straits of Hormuz is mines, not submarines, oddly enough. I think they can deal with the submarines. But if you mine those areas, it's going to be quite difficult because you're going to have to get rid of those mines. We've got new technology. When I say we, the Americans have got new technology for that in the form of underwater drones. You know, the Americans, if they put their mind to it, have got the force capabilities to deal with the Iranians. They've already sunk most of the Iranian Navy anyway. So I think the rest of the Iranian Navy is going to be very reluctant to go to sea. I think it'll be the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps vessels that will be out there. They're obviously got slightly more motivation. They think they're on their way to heaven. So they'll be in the front line, I suspect, just like kamikazes were in World War II.
Now, from a military perspective, and no one's got a crystal ball, but how do you see this playing out? Because Donald Trump has been saying, well, this could go on until September if need be. We're in it for the long term. We're going to get to the other side. But I was, reading that if the Strait of Hormuz is closed for more than a week, it actually precipitates an energy crisis worse than the Arabian Gulf, the Arabian oil embargo of 1973, which basically plunged us into blackouts and 3-day working weeks or whatnot.
I was there.
Yeah, so how is this going to play? If they did start chucking mines in the Strait of Hormuz, this is going to be a nightmare. Or do you think that Iran is now in a position where it is going to be so weakened? Every few minutes there's a headline coming up, a jet's taken out, a warship's been sunk. They don't seem to be winning this, but do you think it does have the potential to drag on? Because if it did, the economic and energy crisis that's going to flow from that is going to be catastrophic.
Well, I think all things are on the table at the moment, Alex. I mean, Iran could collapse like Syria did in the space of a couple of days. You could actually get a situation where the Iranian army turns on the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps and it's all over. At the other end, yeah, they could hold out. I think they are holding back some of their better missiles for later on. But we shouldn't underestimate the weight of attack that Iran is under. I think they're almost paralyzed in terms of operating. I'll give you an indication of it. The missile and drone operations are now being conducted at unit level. There's no direction at all from the government. That actually makes it a bit more dangerous because it's more unpredictable and sporadic. But I think the Americans wouldn't have embarked on this without doing a thorough risk analysis. What I don't know about, and none of us know about, is what political objectives the US government and the Israeli government have actually got in mind here. The one thing I would always ask as a military commander is, what is your political objective here, not your military objective? I can deal with that for you, but what is the political objective? I don't see how this ends.
Yeah, well, you see, I think it's quite clear that they want the regime to collapse. Trump has said it explicitly. Iranians, this is your moment. Take the opportunity. We're going to help you. They've now mobilised Kurdish forces from Iraq to go in as a first wave of some form of ground invasion. And all we're hearing is this sort of weak excuse of, well, we don't know what the plan is. And, like you just said, given that Iran has been an adversary of the West for half a century now, given that, this is how to take down the regime has been going on not even since 2023 in October the 7th, but since Trump 1.0 when he took out the previous head of the IRGC, I would imagine that there is quite a deep and comprehensive strategy. Am I being too optimistic?
No, I think if you look at what CENTCOM, the US Central Command, are saying, they're very clear about their military objectives. That's the point, Alex. I think what's really interesting about the Trump administration is they've said to the military, just get on with your job. They've let them off the leash and said, the fact that an Iranian warship has been torpedoed off the coast of Sri Lanka. It's quite extraordinary. I mean, I was shocked when I heard about it, that actually they would take out something that far from the combat zone. But, you know, as Jackie Fisher said, you know, moderation in war is imbecility. You have to get on with it, do it as quickly as possible, as lethally as possible, so the other side, its will gets to break. And I think that's what the Americans are trying to do right now, is break the will of the regime, such that it says, look, what are your terms? And I suspect that's going on as well through either the Omanis, another intermediary right now. There's no doubt. I mean, the Americans will have gamed this, and I mean gamed literally, because that's how quite a lot of this stuff is done now. Artificial intelligence will be being employed in every aspect of American and Israeli operations right now to make sure they've got the maximum effort going onto every single target and every single thing they're trying to achieve.
Finally, do you think that there are greater global reverberations beyond economic and energy crises, which is if all of the sort of world's kinetic and military energy is being sucked centrifugally into the Middle East, does this not now expose Taiwan, that China might go, that's something we can take now because it can't be defended? Does it actually help Russia, although, of course, they were receiving plentiful amounts of Iranian drones, but does it help them go the eyes off Ukraine?
Well, Alex, if I were Chinese military planner right now, I'd be looking at the American capability right now and saying, am I ready to take that on yet? I'm not sure I am, to tell you the truth. And the Americans, will have gamed what's going on in the Asia Pacific. One of the things that's disappointed me about our own government's response here is the Americans are clearly trying to do the right thing here. And if they get it right, they'll detach Iran from Russia and China, this alliance that they've got. And if you think about it, with Venezuela and Iran in the bag, they're dominating the bulk of the world's oil supply and gas as well. So that's going to affect China and Iran quite significantly in geopolitical terms. But what disappoints me is that the rest of the free world has not said to the Americans, while you're engaged in the greater Middle East, we'll take on some of the other tasks for you. Yeah. We'll actually put presence out there in the Asia Pacific. We'll actually do security tasks. Because during the Falklands, you know, our allies, the New Zealanders, the Australians, did that for us. And I think, you know, one of the big things we need to do in the future is a thing called a 1,000-ship navy. A chap called, we had a sort of ex-chief of the American armed forces said, look, we've got nearly 1,000 warships in the free world, and we should use them together to pursue what the free world is doing. It's not just America. So with China and Russia building up their forces at sea in particular, we should actually exploit the opportunity we've got for using the free world navies to actually patrol what is effectively what I call the physical equivalent of the World Wide Web, the sea.
You know, what is so staggering is the condemnation for Trump's assertiveness has actually come from the West. You know, it's not the Muslim states go, well, that's an illegal war, you shouldn't have gone into Iran. They're saying, please, please, come, help, we don't like them either. And it's actually all of America's allies going, you shouldn't be doing that. It's a craziness. Finally, before I let you go, Chris, what do you make of this? Does this fill you with joy and pride to see our MPs dancing their way to good health as the Middle East is on fire?
Well, Alex, yeah, I mean, I think probably what disappoints me, I'm afraid, is the sort of tin air that our MPs seem to have while the world is burning. And, you know, we've actually got a cost of living crisis, and they think this is good for morale. I think what I've seen on social media just encourages contempt, I'm afraid, for this sort of thing. We want to hear strong leadership. We want to hear things that boost morale in our daily lives right now. Frankly, this is something from the past.
Chris, it's always great to have you on. Thank you for your wisdom and your expertise, and well done for being the only man to have taken out a submarine. I love that little factoid. What a badge of honour that is.